morning to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. Here are the headlines from across the continent of Africa. We start with the papers from Kenya. The Star newspaper. Ruto's new look powerful National Security Council. New forecast, El Nino flooding likely in October. Bipartisan team prioritizes IEBC reconstitution, rights to house, and then newspaper ads exposed KEMSA bungled tender. It's quite something there, isn't it? The Daily Nation, inside Ruto's many battles. And then just down there, MCAs suspended sitting to demand pay rise. Jiraini, 26, and 26 others sent home over release of 160 million Kenya shillings expired sugar. Mukumu students in hospital again. And then portal open for 2022 KCSE candidates to select university and college courses. The Standard newspaper unveiled the cost of top university and TVET courses. And then furious Ruto's warning short in cabinet talks. Funding delays, counties engage shutdown gear. Counties are always threatening to shut down, so I don't know what is going on with this funding for devolution. Hopefully that is sorted out. Spy Master bows out 16 months early. The People Daily, MCAs pay us or we shut counties. Okay. The Business Daily, bank accounts with over 100,000 Kenya shillings hit 1.9 million. Central Bank reveals flight from small banks. KCB, NCBA win high quality accounts raise. Okay, so I guess if you have over 100,000, you are, I don't know. Kenya to roll out 1 million locally assembled phones in 2 months. Locally assembled phones, I'd like to see that. But I just wonder if Kenyans will be willing to buy into that. We have a locally assembled car. I don't know if it's made in Kenya, Mobius. It's really nice, very cool, for the car lovers out there. But every time you see the person in the steering wheel, for the few we see on the roads, it's either a white person. Majority of the time, 90% of the time, it is a white person driving. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's something about us and having confidence and trust and supporting our own. Could be the colonial mentality and what was engraved in us when the colonialists came and changed everything that was us. They changed our cultures. We were told that is not right. This is what you're supposed to do. Our religious practices was modified. Everything else. So we were stripped off. And there's a conversation that goes around because when you look at the international, we're reviewing the newspapers, I'm not too off. When you look at the international, the global sphere, it's easy to identify, say, a European. It is easy to identify a person from the US because of how they talk, their mannerisms, who they are especially. It's easy to identify a person from the Middle East, Asia, and things like that. But it is so difficult to identify us outside of just our color, of who we are as a people. And a lot of it has had to do with the disorientation that perhaps happened during the colonial era, because everything about us, we were stripped off, okay? And so we are still trying to find ourselves. That's why you realize even in so many African societies, countries, very few of them will have a unique, say, a music attached to them. And, countries like Nigeria, South Africa, they have been successful in crafting certain aspects of things that they enjoy to do as a country and as a people that identify them from the there with their bunga and all that. But the rest of us, sometimes we don't know where we fall. We don't know whether to feel like the Jamaican today. We don't know whether to dance to Afrobeats in the afternoon. We don't know whether we want to enjoy some R&B or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you look at, even when you listen to the sound of our music, it is neither here nor there. It's very difficult to identify one And when you listen to it, no matter where you are in the world, and say that is a Kenyan sound, that is a Kenyan, dressing outside of the Maasai shukas that we see, but it's very difficult, and it's not just a Kenyan thing. It is something that we see across the continent of Africa. And so sometimes you wonder, who are we really as a people? And if you don't know who you are, then these people out here, see what they've been trying to do. They've been trying to define us, for us, and imposing certain values and imposing certain things, because we are lost. We are not very strongly rooted in who we are as a people. And so I think it is important. So I'm saying all this to say that while Kenya is rolling out 1 million locally assembled phones, this is what brought up all these stories. I love history, so just bear with me. Very few Kenyans will have the confidence to walk to the shop and put their money, probably they'll not be very expensive, so maybe, but very few Kenyans would want to spend their money in buying a locally assembled phone, which is quite unfortunate. So how do we expect to grow our local industries? How do you expect to support and expand on our manufacturing? I remember the previous regime, President Uhuru Kenyatta had 4 points, things that he really wanted to do. He was very clear about doing them, and one of them was manufacturing, because we understand that what we call here the local, the Juakali sector, that is the small-scale manufacturing industry. You'll find them in markets, you'll find them in the backyards, you'll find them across, and they are actually the people who are supporting the economy of this country, okay? Whether they pay taxes or not, that is another conversation that KRA should look into finding. I don't know, but some of them do. A good number of them do, I believe, because there are measures that have been put in place. But nevertheless, they provide a huge employment to so many Kenyans. And the things that they produce, a lot of times, are not things that you will take to other countries. They're things that are consumed locally, so they get to service or to offer that product to the local consumers. And we can't build on that and expand on that and strengthen that part of our economy if we really are not intentional in doing so. I think it has to take very strong intentions, and a government that will take a chance and that will be strategic in that regard, so that we are able to strengthen these small-scale farmers. I'm not talking about Mama Mboga here. No, but maybe they fall under that category. But we need to strengthen, this side of the economy, so that the day-to-day person, the person that cannot afford the 100,000 in their bank account, but they are able to have a decent living, at least pay their rent, educate their children, and just have food on a daily, okay? And this is the industry. And so we have to be intentional as a country, and this is not just for Kenya, but I think for Africa. And these are some of the changes that we must see, or our leaders must think about in this continent, if we really must lift us up from where we are and move forward and try to catch up. That is how China developed, through the cottage industries. This one's owned by families, things that are just done in the backyard, in the front gate, in your estate, whatever. The small cottage, this cottage industries, that is what has built China and its economy and where it is today. So as much as China and US, they really don't like each other because of the competition in the international system. But the biggest exporter, to China is the US. The US, the biggest importer, for the US is China and things like that. So they are the biggest traders together. So when you hear caught up in which side do we support and all that, do we go with China, do we go with the US, they make you fight each other. And I see the positions that we are forced to take here in the continent, and our leaders sometimes are not smart enough. They fall for this international politics. They force you to choose sides and make certain decisions in your country that will not serve you in the long interest and is not serving your interest at the optimum. And yet they get to benefit from each other in terms of trade. Remember the trade wars that Donald Trump started in 2008 with the increasing of taxes and all that caused a lot of mayhem in the international trade system. But at the end of the day, it did not change the fact that China still needed US as a trading partner, and the US needed China as a trading partner. So as much as they have all these politics of dominance and power politics ongoing, but still, they understand where their priorities are. They understand that they need each other, and they're still able to trade with each other and benefit. A lot of companies from the US, they have their manufacturing done in China because it's cheap labor and all that, and availability of raw materials, which is also cheaper from there. But we are caught up here. So anyway, these locally assembled phone stories has really triggered a lot of perhaps trauma that we are suffering from this continent. So anyway, hopefully Kenyans will be supportive of this. We need to support things like this so that we are able to strengthen and build our economy. And that is the point where sometimes even patriotism comes in. Well, it's easy to argue it might not be of a better quality compared maybe to the iPhone or Samsung or these other great brands. But even for them, look at the first iPhone and you compare it with what we have right now. It is different. But because people bought into this brand, it enabled them to innovate and to become better. So if you support this brand, we will give it a chance to become better and to become more competitive. But but if we don't, then it will die at the start. It will not get a chance to really, get more innovative and produce even better phones in the future. We don't know what it will look like. So maybe they'll bring an iPhone 2.0. I don't know. So we shall be waiting to see. But I'm just saying, let's be a little bit patriotic and sometimes in Africa and learn to support our own, learn to put our money where we live in areas that will support us. If you support your economy and things that are manufactured locally, you are supporting, you're building a stronger country, you're building your economy. And so that's all I'm trying to say in all these many words. Taifa leo, hii imeoza. I thought they were going to say hii imeenda. I don't know. I think that is the uchaguzi wa UN EAC waonyesha sekta ya afya imetekwa na magenge serikalini. What they're saying in short, a lot of cartels have taken over the health ministry. Well, this is not news. They've been there for a very long time and they've continued. According to the Daily Nation here, Imanda, that is not what we want to hear. Kenyans would want to know Imanda wapi and how can we get the person that is trying to get away with this very important public, parastatals and ministries and all that. We need to get people accountable. That's what Kenyans would want to hear. The Nation from Nigeria, expect institutional reforms, Tinubu promises Nigerians. U.S. Secretary of State calls President-elect on phone. Kiyamo chides fuming Atiku for criticizing Blinken's actions. And INEC OB unwilling to pay exhibits certification fee. So, Obi, how do you expect to win this case? You have to pay the certification fee of the exhibits. I guess that is the part of your, what will be used in your court that you filed to challenge the win of Tinubu. So, if you're not willing to pay for that, so what will happen now? Are you not jeopardizing, or you already see that maybe this case is not strong enough, so you don't feel the need for you to invest your money in that? That could be also one aspect, but also, EFCC writes outgoing governor. That is what we have there. The Daily Trust from Nigeria. Federal government to replace striking doctors with ad hoc staff. No, you don't replace striking doctors. You pay doctors. You pay them. Otherwise, they'll continue leaving to other countries. You don't replace them. You cannot replace. Do you know how long it takes to study and become a doctor, a medical doctor? Okay, so you don't. Doctors are on strike. was just reading another news also. Part of the UK, some of them will be striking, but those are resident doctors, the one who are still in training. They're called resident doctors, and all that. But nobody can fire them. Okay, nobody can fire them. Picketing and protesting and all these things and go slows, those are part of democracies. And so what you need is just get them on the table and talk, because if you fire them, then you'll be creating a crisis in the health ministry that is already in very bad shape. So that is not what you want there in Nigeria. So you don't fire, you don't replace them. You bring them to the table and you have conversations and see how can you solve this problem moving forward. Okay. The punchers from Nigeria, PDP, Labour Party, kick as US Secretary of State calls Tinubu. So they're mad. That's what this paper is telling us. Tinubu, Obi and Atiku are not happy because the US Secretary of State called Tinubu, I guess, to congratulate him. I think they're feeling that the case is still in court. Look, the case being in court has not stopped Tinubu from being sworn in. He'll be sworn in on the 29th. So what do you want the rest of us to do? That is how your constitution works. You guys need to work on changing your constitution and, the laws around electoral laws and elections, so that you change that part and perhaps include what we have here, which is if there's a case in court challenging you in, then you cannot be sworn in. And the Constitution provides for a timeline when these cases are supposed to be heard. They're given priority very quickly, and then the country moves on. Because when you're having a case in court challenging the win of Tinubu, and the way I'm seeing this case moving very slowly, it may not even be determined anytime soon. And then at the same time, his preparations for his swearing in are ongoing. Now, what is the rest of us supposed to do? I think it will be the right thing to congratulate our president-elect. I think the U.S. waited up, but now the guy is being sworn in. So, I wouldn't fault the U.S. Secretary of State. They're just doing the right thing. When a winner has been declared anywhere in the world, they're quick to congratulate and do all that. So they've been waiting up. And apparently, so if the court, gives a different outcome, then they'll take back the congratulations. So you can't get mad that the U.S. Secretary of State called Tinubu. He is the president-elect, for heaven's sakes. So that's the only, it is the right thing to do. That's what they do all the time. So you need to get a grip there, and don't let your domestic, don't look at the international politics from your very narrow domestic political, perspective. That can be very dangerous. Okay, I regret backing Tambuwal to become speaker. Another person there is saying 7 banks fined 1 billion naira for forex offences. Matawale urges EFCC to probe presidency officials and ministers. Confusion as Labour Party factions clash at tribunal. Look at that. They're not even speaking in one voice. So, okay. The Daily News from Zimbabwe. Unions demand to meet with ED. Workers reel from country's economic crisis. South Africa, USA, scary to kiss, makeup. Okay. Newsday. This is also from Zimbabwe. Government digs in on steep nomination fees. CCC, ZANU-PF activists clash in Umguza. And EU celebrates Zimbabwe culture in Matobo. And 4 students arrested over Sikala demo. The Herald from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, Mozambique tackle energy deficit. Multitudes welcome President Nyusi. Yesterday I was reading to you this news item. Uganda and Rwanda are producing so much electricity. We have enough here in Kenya, so we're good. So they're producing so much that now they want to supply, the excess to other countries. Okay, fine. They do have excess electricity. I'd be interested to know the electrification percentage. I'll probably go look that up and then I'll let you know, because if you have so much electricity, then I'm assuming it will only be right that everybody gets electricity. I was just looking at a list from 2022, and on the percentages on electrification. I think Kenya was at maybe number 8. Kenya was number 8, or it was in the top 10, though. It was in the top 10. And countries in North Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, like 99%. The others who were 100% electrified, even in the remotest of places, they had electricity. So it's like we're living in two different worlds, and yet we are in the same Africa. Okay, so anyway, I'm just saying South Africa should should maybe do a study in Uganda and Rwanda, and these are the countries that seems to be working to address the issue of electrification or having enough electricity for their people, and see how they can fix this problem that it's very embarrassing for a country of its status. I think it should not be happening, surely. The New Times from Rwanda, Kwibuka 29, remember, unite, renew. I think they're celebrating something. I don't know what that is. Rwanda, Uganda, in 400 megawatts energy deal. I'd not even seen that. That was the next headline. I'd not even seen it. And power trading through the lines between the two countries had initially been planned to begin in 2020, and then, they had those issues. And so Museveni's son became the diplomat, and he was able to bring, his father, and, he refers to Kagame as his uncle, together. And so some of these things that had stalled, they seem to be picking back, and I think that is good for this region. So that is what I was trying to explain there, giving the example of South Africa and its problems with power. The Daily News from Egypt. Arab Ministerial Group calls for immediate sustainable ceasefire in Sudan. CBE to discuss fate of EGP interest rate amid strong expectations of no changes. Okay, and foreign ministers in Arab League welcomed return of Syria to regional bloc. Syria came back to the Arab League. It was suspended in 2012. Could be wrong, but around there. Just after the Arab Spring, and they were supporting. Some of these things are being led by the US. The removal of Assad. Assad is still there, so nothing changed really. Environment Minister, German company discussed reducing the reliance on single-use plastic bags. I'm glad Kenya we did that, and it's being implemented, and that has become our norm. You go anywhere in the market, you're given the renewable shopping bags. So, initially it was very weird walking around with a bag inside your bag, but now it's become so normal. And truly, when I look around, the environment has become more cleaner, because you don't see those plastic bags. They're being disposed anywhere, whichever way. And now it has become cleaner because they're not there. So it's really good for the environment. And this is something that I think countries needs to work on and adopt more, so that we stop the single use plastic bags, unless on certain specific items, like bread. If you put it in a different kind of a bag, which is not plastic, then it will dry up. So maybe specific items, you leave that for, and perhaps we improve on the quality. But also, if you can just move away from that and just adopt these bags that are recyclable, that you can carry, that are not a danger to our environment, I think that will be great, and people should follow that example from Kenya. The Citizen from Tanzania. How government will address traders' complaints. This, Tanzanians, the government always has a plan, okay? Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa yesterday convinced traders in Kariakoo, Dar es Salaam, to end their 3-day strike after forming a 14-member committee to address their grievances. Dungai, why I resigned as a speaker, and 4 issues take center stage in education budget debate. Agent banking revolutionaries, delivery of financial services, and then, okay, that is what we have. So some newspapers from, let's look at these ones from the US. The Guardian, USA edition. Quad commit cancelled Quad Summit. Quad Summit cancelled after Joe Biden calls off trip to Australia. And then USA Today, psychological torture in last hours of Title 42. Okay. And GOP awaits what debt deal talks may render. And expelled migrants tell of a perilous journey come to no good end. No surge is seen, but conditions at border are fluid. Family want banks to pay for elder abuse scam. The New York Times, uneasy questions for chokehold witnesses. Sorry. Small advance kindles hopes for Kyiv forces, and Ukraine's allies spar over a push to send F-16 jets. Milestone vote in Philadelphia. The Washington Post, deal could stand the Colorado River crisis. Long idle 1873 law finds traction in abortion case. Test of nerves on debt ceiling. And the US, they're having that conversation there. Anyway, I don't want to get into that right now. Overdose preventing centers are opposed despite success. New York Post. Ex-royals claim they were chased 2 hours through New York City. Police say otherwise. Okay. Duke and Duchess of New York Post. You're sounding like the British tabloids. They are calling them Duke and Duchess of Hazard. Just being shady over there. You're probably tired of them too. I don't know. The UK papers, The Independent. Harry and Meghan in near catastrophic 2-hour car chase. Couple claim they were pursued through New York by highly aggressive paparazzi, but police say no injuries or arrests. Okay. And iNews, Britain asks EU to soften Brexit trade rules as car industry panics. Why? Britain. And this is what happens. I think I've tried explaining something to do with multipolarity. And these alliances and when they're formed, okay? So an alliance like EU, when they formed it in a way, if you dare leave, then the consequences, you will feel them. Like it will be pricey for you. So now Britain cannot ask EU to soften Brexit trade rules. No. You are going to trade with EU the way we are trading with EU. Of course, you have an upper hand because you're in Europe. And when it comes to your products and all that, perhaps the standards are different. But it is the same rule book. You decided to leave the European Union. So you must be treated as an example to the rest of any other member who might wake up one morning and decide EU is not for them. So they must make sure that they punish you in a way that will scare Lithuania, for instance, if it decides to wake up and leave, or France, because sometimes the way I hear Macron talk, sometimes you never know. Okay, so Brexit. EU is doing this on purpose, and these are rules and laws that are put in place that govern this alliance. And so, Britain, you cannot complain. You left because you needed to enjoy certain freedoms that you felt were being infringed when you were a part of the European Union. And you left because of 1 or 2 issues. But now, that has affected your economy, that is affecting your movement, that is affecting you. So you cannot ask EU now to soften the trade rules. No. You cannot have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it. You decided to leave the European Union. Matter of fact, EU just tightened those rules so that next time anybody decides, because this is a union that took so long, that took a lot of effort, that took a lot of resources to build. And European Union has become a model of a very strong bloc across the world. I cannot even compare it with the African Union. It has become a model. Of course, right now it is being challenged because, it is a model that they think is perfect, and now they have to keep pushing it towards us, and tell us, unless you are like us, then you have a problem. okay? Unless your democracy is like us, then you have a problem. And so as much as that is there, them and the US does that a lot, but every member that entered and made up this union, it is a very grueling process for you to be admitted as a member of the European Union. Ask Turkey. Turkey has been wanting to join the European Union since it was formed, okay? But they have refused. Of course, for Turkey, they're having issues with Turkey. Sometimes you don't know whether Turkey is European or Turkey is from Middle East. They're just in between there. It's very, when I was talking about identity as a people and as a region, as a core or as a periphery, then it becomes difficult because Turkey is very difficult to place it. And it's been wanting to join the European Union. And sometimes I feel the reason why they're reluctant to admit Turkey in this union, because they're saying there's a deficit of the rule of law, there's human rights abuses and things like that, which it's neither here nor there, but, some freedoms are being infringed. Well, you can see that if you've been watching the campaigns and the elections that happened on Sunday. Erdogan did not win. He did not meet the threshold of 50+1, so they will be going for a rerun. So there are reports that his competitor, the one that came second, he was not even allowed enough airtime in government media houses, be it print, be it television or radio. He was denied. So, things like that do not fit in within the values of the European Union. So it is things like that that perhaps are making the European Union still make Turkey wait out until it really does embody and assume and act within these values that guide the relations in the European Union. And so, yeah, but it is a very grueling process for you to join. So once you've made all this effort, you have joined, and you have spent so much money, you have spent so much time, you have all these things, and then you enjoy all these advantages that come when you're a member of this union. And then one day you decide, because you don't want these migrants from Syria, now you're going to leave the union. But you forgot to look at the bigger picture and what this Brexit was going to affect other aspects of UK, okay? So now eat your tomatoes. That is what I was saying in saying all these things. You eat your tomatoes. You cannot have your cake and eat it. You decided to leave. That's it. So you cannot ask the EU to soften the Brexit, because you will set a bad precedent, and other countries who perhaps want to act differently, then, Switzerland is not part of the EU. It does whatever it does, and it chooses to engage in whichever way it chooses to engage, and nobody cares because it felt it can't uphold some of these things and values. And it's fine. It has crafted a way of engagement with the rest of the European Union. But you agreed to go in there. So if it softens these laws for you, I'm sure there could be some countries who maybe are feeling, maybe a lot of these things are stringent, so we might want to have some little bit of a leeway and some breathing space. And they might be contemplating to leave. So if they soften this, it will embolden others. So no, they should not soften. They shouldn't. In fact, they should tighten it so that you, UK, act as an example of anybody. You refuse to abandon your pound, I do understand, because of the history and the image of the Queen and all that. Other countries abandoned their currencies. Germany, others. Of course, a country like France, they still have the francs and all that. But majority of the countries have abandoned their local currency, and they have adopted. So they have given up so much for them to be in this union, only for you to decide you wanted to leave, and now you want them to lax these rules for you. I say no to that. No, so Jaguar Land Rover warns current deal is unrealistic for electric car manufacture in UK. So Jaguar Land Rover, these are manufactured in the UK. So I guess having some of the rules, the current deal as it is that was attained through Brexit, makes it now so difficult for these cars to be manufactured in the UK. See, so that's what you didn't think about now, UK. These Brexiteers who voted to leave. So now you're being affected in other ways. But anyway, you still have your freedom and to choose who you want and you do not want in your country. New York catches sparks royal security row. Okay. The Metro Harry and Meghan in paparazzi car chase. You know, I knew, once I heard of this story, I knew this will be the headline in all UK papers because of their dislike and obsession of this couple. The Guardian, Harry and Meghan in near catastrophic car chase with paparazzi. And then Prime Minister accused of being out of touch over cost of living. Water Farms 10 billion pounds plan to reduce sewage spills. The Daily Express, Rishi raises hope of tax cuts before election. And Harry and Meghan near catastrophic paparazzi catches. Who does these headlines? You can find that one story, it has the same wording, it has the same picture, it has this, like lazy editors, you know. I think when the king also, during coronation, also they had the same title, they said, like it's, anyway, but those are the British papers. The Financial Times, German car makers press for delay in Brexit rules on tariff-free access to UK. Electric vehicles face 10% levies. Rules of origin threaten sales. Brussels not open to change. That's right. Brussels, that is the headquarters of EU. All right. The Times. Water Farms £10 billion plan to prevent sewer spills. Have I not read the exact same thing from the other paper? Okay. And then fattest people place twice as much strain on NHS funds. That's not a nice thing to say. How do you put that on the headline? The Daily Telegraph, massive cost of obesity, same story. Massive cost of obesity to the NHS is revealed. Because I guess some of, I don't say fat, but you know, there is a level of obesity that really brings, I guess, comes with other side effects and other problems, health problems. So you have to perhaps visit the hospital more often or get some other special attention more often than the regular healthy weighted person. I guess that's why they're saying, according to NHS, people who have a bit of more weight are costing the health system in the UK. I want to cut legal migration, says Sunak as he ducks manifesto pledge. The Daily Mail, now the stammer Musk sleeps on Brexit. Harry and Meghan in near catastrophic car chase with paparazzi. Same thing. That is the Daily Mail. All right, I think we're done. I think we've done a proper newspaper review this morning. How much time do I have left? All right, let's just get into the news from across the continent this morning. We'll start from Sudan. The UN on Wednesday said $3.03 billion will be needed to provide urgent aid in conflict-ravaged Sudan, and for over 1 million expected to flee into neighboring countries this year. Around 1,000 people have been killed in and around Khartoum and the ravaged state of West Darfur since the war began, according to medics. Who is this speaking? Ramesh Rajasigam, the head of the UN Humanitarian Agency, was speaking in Geneva, and he said that he pointed to the worrying reports of increased sexual violence and warned children are more vulnerable in this unfolding chaos. The fighting has deepened the humanitarian crisis in Sudan, where 1 in 3 already relied on assistance before the war. The UN said $2.56 billion is now expected to be needed to provide assistance inside Sudan, and $1.75 billion estimated at the end of last year. Those funds will allow aid agencies to reach 18 million of the most vulnerable people inside the country. He lamented that the humanitarian community have suffered numerous attacks, with aid workers killed as well as offices and stockpiles looted. He voiced hope that an agreement reached by the two sides last week to spare civilians and civilian infrastructure and to let in badly needed aid was having some effect. The UN Refugee Agency said $470.4 million will be needed to assist those fleeing the country, and it was now planning for up to 1.1 million people to leave Sudan this year. Just 2 weeks ago, UNHCR had said it would need 445 million US dollars through October to address the needs of as many as 860,000 people who might flee. And in Nigeria, the authorities there and the American authorities are investigating after armed men on Tuesday attacked a U.S. convoy in southeastern Anambra State, killing 2 consulate staff and 2 policemen. Nigerian police say the attackers also abducted 2 police officers and a driver. Anambra State Police Command spokesperson Tochukwu Ikenga said on Wednesday that security forces are searching for the perpetrators and the 3 people they abducted. In a separate statement late Tuesday, Ikenga said local police were unaware of the movement of the U.S. convoy until after the attack and that the area was known for separatist violence. Police say the attackers opened fire on the motorcade, killed the officers and the U.S. consulate workers and then burned their corpses along with the vehicle. Nigerian police and White House national security official John Kirby said there were no U.S. citizens in the convoy. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but authorities suspect the separatist agitators in the region. Security forces have blamed the indigenous people of Biafra for increasing violence in the southeast. And in Ethiopia, rebels in Ethiopia's Oromo region have accused federal troops of launching attacks despite an agreement stemming from Tanzania peace talks to de-escalate the conflict. Preliminary talks between the rebel Oromo Liberation Army (OLA) and the government took place earlier this month in Tanzania with no agreement reached, but OLA spokesperson Oda Tarbi said the attacks contradicted the understandings that the 2 parties reached. The rebel group said federal groups attacked several points in the Oromia region, specifically West and East Welega, East and West Shoa, Arsi, Borana, Harege, and Horo Guduru. It said troops burned houses, robbed people, confiscated. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Okay, but it is confiscated mobile phones and committed acts of sexual violence, among other crimes. The media tried to reach out to the Oromo region spokesperson and security advisor to the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for comment, but he has not received, and the media has not received any response. Fighting between the OLA and federal troops has gone on for 4 years and displaced thousands from their homes. Abiy announced that peace talks with the group would begin in April. Since then, each side has reiterated its commitment to a peaceful resolution. However, the OLA said it will not be pushed to accepting subpar political settlement through military pressure. Okay. And in Somalia, the government has expelled 2 European Union employees accused of illegally taking photos of prisoners at a detention center. In a brief statement broadcast by Somali National Television, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it made the decision after receiving a request from Somali Attorney General Suleiman Mohammed Mahmoud to remove the 2 from the country. The ministry identified the workers as Jacek Joseph Ochman of Poland and Ralph Bernard Gehlig of Germany, and accused them of violating the laws and the rules of the country. They were also accused of interfering in the internal affairs of Somalia. The Somali government asked the EU to remove the men from Somalia within 72 hours, and Somalia has learned the media has learned that Somalia they've left the country on Tuesday. The 2 were working for the European Union capability building mission in Somalia. Multiple sources confirmed that the expulsions are related to the detention of Iranian boats and 36 fishermen accused of illegal fishing in Somalia waters. Most of the fishermen are Iranians, according to the sources. And Somalia, the media obtained a letter sent by Mohamud to Minister of Foreign Affairs Abshir Omar Jama. In it, Mohamud said Ochman and Gehlig visited the prisoners on April 30th at a detention center belonging to the Somali Maritime Police at Mogadishu Airport and secretly took pictures of them. The letter also said the action to take the photos secretly violated the Somali Penal Code. It said Ochman led the EU team that visited the installation and ordered the pictures, and that Gehlig took them. The Attorney General said he asked the Foreign Ministry to remove the men from Somalia because they have immunity and cannot be criminally prosecuted. In March, the Somali Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources issued a press release stating that foreign vessels had been fishing illegally in Somalia's exclusive economic zone since January 2023. The ministry did not identify which countries the vessels belonged to, but said they did not have access agreements and licenses from the Somali government. The ministry said illegal fishing constitute a significant threat to Somalia's fishing stock, food security and marine ecology. It urged all foreign vessels fishing illegally to leave Somalia's waters. And then in Cameroon, officials in the country say 18 separatists have disarmed and surrendered to authorities, the biggest defection since the conflict began in 2017. Authorities say the English-speaking rebels, including two self-proclaimed generals who are hiding across the border in neighboring Nigeria, leaders of the separatists who want to break away from the French-speaking majority Cameroon, have vowed to track down and kill the defectors. Cameroon's military says 18 fighters, including David Dibo, alias General Baron, and Ekpa Jerome, alias General JP. They have really fancy names. You'll think they're rappers, but they're rebels, okay? So make no mistakes. Surrendered and handed over their weapons in Mundemba on Tuesday. Mundemba is a town in Cameroon's English-speaking southwest region that shares a border with Nigeria. Since 2017, separatists have been fighting to carve out an independent state called Ambazonia in Cameroon's English-speaking northwest and southwest regions. The self-proclaimed General Baron says he convinced the fighters to surrender. He says Cameroon military firepower was more than they could bear and that he saw several hundred fighters killed by government troops within the past 6 years. He says he's pleading with scores of fighters who are still hiding in the bush to drop their weapons and be pardoned by the Cameroonian government. He says hiding in the border with Nigeria should hand their weapons to Cameroonian police or government troops as he did, without which they will be killed by either hunger, disease or in battle. Speaking with Cameroonian state broadcaster CRTV on Tuesday, Baron says the fighters handed their weapons to Cameroon's military and the government officials in Dian, an administrative unit where Mundemba is located. And Gilbert Guibai Gabaltina is the highest Cameroonian government official in Dian, and he has assured the former fighters that the government will certainly protect them. And in Lesotho, authorities in the country have imposed an indefinite curfew in hopes of curbing gun violence in the South African Mountain Kingdom in response to the shooting to death of a journalist over the weekend. About 10 p.m. Sunday, unknown assailants gunned down investigative journalist and radio presenter Rally Conello. I can't say that name because it will need me to click. I don't know how to say it, so I'll just move on. His name is Rally Conello, with that other name, Joke, as he left the radio station Tenolo FM in the capital, Maseru. After presenting his program, he was shot once in the head and at least 13 times in the body. Less than 24 hours later, the government imposed a countrywide curfew that went into effect on Tuesday. The curfew restricts movement between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., the country's police minister Lebona Lipima said, although hospitals and media and the security sector are exempted from the rule. Jockey, host of the current affairs show Holokoana Latela, translated in English, I had it all through the grapevine, reported on government affairs, corruption and organized crime. And then you wonder that he was a target. In 2021, he broke a story about 5 politicians who were illegally trading alcohol. Joki's killing was likely in retaliation for his reporting. According to press freedom groups, the journalist reportedly received at least 3 death threats from different Facebook accounts earlier this year that were related to his reporting. Out of the 180 countries, Lesotho ranks 67 in terms of press freedom, according to Reporters Without Borders. Press freedom groups like the Committee to Protect Journalists, or CPJ, and the International Federation of Journalists, IFJ, called on local authorities to launch an investigation into Joki's killing. Lesotho's Police Minister Lepema said the indefinite curfew was intended to address gun violence across the country. Lesotho has the world's third largest homicide rate, with more than 43 murders per 100,000 people, according to World Population Review. But opposition leader Machetse Mofomobi criticized the curfew, saying it will not actually curb gun violence. And Kenyan president, that is my president, Dr. William Ruto, has once again called out the two warring Sudanese generals, urging them to stop the fighting that has entered its second month. Intense battles in the capital Khartoum and its sister cities of Bahri and Omdurman have raged despite Saudi and US brokered talks between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF in Jeddah, aimed at securing humanitarian access and ceasefire. Okay, so I will quote what President Ruto was saying in the Pan-African Parliament Summit in South Africa. They've been there, where President Ramaphosa was saying, he will constitute an African head of state team to go find problems with the war between Russia and Ukraine, while we have an active conflict here in Sudan that perhaps we should think about. But anyway, this is what my president said. These generals are bombing everything: roads, hospitals, bridges, and destroying the airport using military hardware bought with African money. We need to tell those generals to stop the nonsense. Okay? The Kenyan leader, who has been tasked, he's part of the mediation. Have that in mind. He's part of the mediation. Him, the President Putin and President Salva Kiir, okay, a part of the mediation, courtesy of GOV'T. So the Kenyan leader who has been tasked by the regional bloc GOV'T, together with other heads of state, help in reconciling Sudan's rival sides, said military capacity was for battling criminals and terrorists and not for fighting children and women. And I do agree, with that point. Mr. Ruto, however, blamed African states for lacking the capacity to stop the war in Sudan, because, like he put it, our people, peace and security is funded by others. Nearly 1,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million displaced in Sudan since battles between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, who heads a paramilitary force, erupted in April. The unrest has caused about 200,000 to flee into nearby countries, and those still in Khartoum are struggling to survive. I can see the spirit of Pan-Africanism rise inside my president. Soon he'll start sounding like Mugabe in this African Union summit, and then it will be a problem with our Western allies. But I can feel it. I think in him, as much as when you are a leader like this, you must have some level of diplomacy, but you can feel from what he's saying and from other leaders, enough is enough. Let's call a thing a thing. And he's trying to say that in the best words possible, except I don't know if his choice of words in speaking, addressing the US, these Sudan generals, is the most appropriate, being that he's part of the mediations team. So if you're telling them to stop the nonsense, which I do agree, like, this conflict, this fighting, this suffering is unnecessary, okay? But now that you're part of the mediation team, Mr. President, these are not the kinds of words you use. Moses Kuria can use that, and he tried. I mean, the government had to apologize on behalf of the rest of us. Did you not? Because of what he said. Because what you say matter. And especially since you're part of that mediation process. So as much as I can understand your frustration, and I feel like they need some people to just go point to their face and tell them, you need to stop with this nonsense. Say it, but you can't. Okay? Because of your position as the head of state, and especially your position as part of the mediation, you cannot use those words. As much as you feel like that is happening, which I'm not disputing, but at the end of the day, diplomacy, diplomacy, diplomacy. We need a training on that now. Diplomacy, diplomacy. Because if I'm sure Al-Burhan knows that you said that. I'm sure Hemedi, where he is hiding somewhere in those hospitals, I don't know, but he's heard you say that. The next time you'll be calling to have them come, because IGAD has not been successful. Now, if this is your approach, then IGAD's led process is not going anywhere. It has been overtaken by these other processes in Cairo. When I was reading the headlines in that newspaper from Egypt, the Arab League was calling upon these military leaders to stop. So you can see their voices, that mediation part, and also that led by Saudi Arabia, which I told you the agreement they signed, it was not even worth, the paper it was signed on. Nobody was going to respect, this because they signed an agreement to agree not to a ceasefire, but to protect the lives of the civilians. But that has continued. The civilians are still in danger. Of course, part of that has reduced a little bit, but they're still fighting, and civilians are becoming casualties, and they're dying, and others are being injured. So, nobody is really respecting their words there. So, President Ruto, I understand your frustration, and I understand why you can't get why these two sides have decided to contribute to the collapse of their country. It does not make any sense. But even with that, choice of words is important, especially when it comes to diplomacy. So now, if you've told them to stop the nonsense, these are generals. I don't know how you're going to call them to the mediation table now, because now I'm sure they feel certain ways about you, and the next thing you know, they'll be like, we don't want Kenya to be part of that. If Kenya is part of that mediation process, we're not coming. And yet, Kenya is the one country that they have been quite confident in leading this mediation, in being part of this mediation. We have no problems and qualms with Sudan. Okay, so we don't want to create any problems. So as much as I do understand, but that is not how you speak. So we need to tell those generals to stop the nonsense. No, leave that to Moses Kuri. You can't say that. You're his cabinet secretary. Okay. So there's so much I will not talk about because of the interest of time. But this story, this Lesotho story, not every day we get stories from Lesotho because there's not so much happening. But there's been some activities here and there. And so this journalist, of course, was targeted. But the story for me is that after the journalist was targeted and murdered, he was an investigative journalist, and a lot of his journalism work, targeted the who and who's in the political, platform and all that. And so obviously it was a target. And this is not the first time a journalist doing this kind of work has been targeted in Lesotho. There is a history of that. But what really caught my attention is the government's reaction. One journalist was murdered. You decide to put a curfew for the whole city. What is that? So they have, authorities in Lesotho have imposed an indefinite curfew in hopes of curbing gun violence in the Southern African. Okay, so hold on. So let me see if it's just in the city or it's all over. Okay, so it's a countrywide curfew because one journalist was shot. This is a targeted murder. So because you're overreacting, and most likely you know who did this, allegedly. So now because you want to divert the attention and you want to look like you're doing something, you are disrupting everybody else's life because one person was killed in a targeted attack. It's like trying to kill a mosquito that has landed on you with a hammer. And it has landed on you with a hammer. Most likely you'll break your arm. You have not solved the problem. You're creating more problem. I'm sure there are outside of the hospitals and journalists and all these very few, workers that you have allowed to operate past 10, p.m. There are other sectors, there are other industries which work at night. you're going to affect your economy with such silly decisions. Surely, that is not how you're overreacting. So everybody else's life will be disrupted because the government cannot do its job properly to take care of the security. And because one journalist that from the story we know was targeted and murdered. And so the rest of the people in Lesotho have to suffer. Now you have a curfew indefinitely. Surely. This is nonsense. And I think the next day I'll come back here to talk about this story. Now, President Ruto, that is nonsense. But you still can't say that. Okay? You still can't say that, but I can. So next time I'll be coming back here with this story, I guarantee you. I'll be reporting about protests that are happening, and unions will be going on protest to protest such knee-jerk solutions, that the authorities in Lesotho is making over the killing of one journalist. Not that it does matter, but that is not how you address that problem, surely. You don't bring the whole country to a curfew because one person was murdered. His life matters. Whatever he was doing matters to the general public in Lesotho, but that cannot be the government's reaction. That is unacceptable. Okay, so the rest of the stories we shall look at later, because there are a few there that I really would like to give my thoughts on, but let's do that at 3 p.m. East African time. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. It is exactly 11 a.m. here in Nairobi, I think. All right, you have a good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are watching us from, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.